Great. So I'll follow up with him and let him know that you're waiting for the grades.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Let's start with the Mangalacharan. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Mukham karoti vachanam pangam langyate girim yatpatamam vande Shri Gurudina Karanam Paramanandam Madhavam. Hare Krishna, thank you for joining. So first of all, happy Kartik. We are almost a week into our most auspicious month, Damodar, and really fortunate to be able to spend time with devotees and do Krishna Katha. So thank you for that opportunity. Last week, we had a student presentation on the 14th chapter. And as I typically do, I'll follow up with a summation of the points that were put in the presentation and some of the other points noted by acharyas. Following that, we'll leave some time for discussion, and then we'll conclude with the allocation of the sections for chapter 15, which will be for the take home for the respective groups, so that next week we can start off with the respective group presenting the 15th chapter. Okay, so I'm going to share my presentation. Okay, so we had gone through the introductory slides, essentially talks about the three modes of material nature. We talked about how they're connected to the 13th chapter. In 1322, Krishna had spoken the seed words, Purusha Prakriti Stohi, Bhakti Prakriti Changona, that the living entity follows through life conditioned by the modes of material nature, right? So he basically lays the seed. And if you remember, one of the questions, the 6 questions that Arjuna asked was about Prakriti. Right? He says, Kshetra, Kshetragya, Jnanam, Geyam, Purusham, Prakriti. And Prakriti essentially is the modes of material nature. So this chapter is essentially a more elaborate answer. Krishna already answers it briefly in the 13th chapter. This is a more elaborate answer. So this was essentially a brief overview of how the jiva, originally a spirit soul, turns away from Krishna and voluntarily accepts material nature, and therefore gets conditioned. This was the division of the chapter and the discussion. So this slide essentially is the main talking point of the slide of how the embodied soul is bound to the material nature by the 3 ropes of the gunas. Gunas essentially mean ropes. The whole mechanism of binding and embodied soul. So one of the questions that is often raised is that if everything is done by the modes of material nature, then why does the jiva enjoy and suffer? Like this point is being made that everything is external. Prakriti kriyamanani guna karmani sarvasha. And why is it that the jiva is suffering? One of the analogies that can help us understand is that we have personal experience that we are sitting and watching a horror movie. So we may be actually safe in our house. But when we are watching that movie, we experience a lot of fear. Now we know it's a movie, we know that it's happening, it's make-believe, but nevertheless, we do experience different emotions, sometimes relief, sometimes fear, sometimes anger. Now, why is that? Because we choose to associate with the movie, right? We become a part of the movie. And we then begin to experience whatever the producer is trying to project through the actors. So it's exactly the same, that even though the modes are external, but the jiva chooses to associate with them. Krishna says, Purusha Prakrati Stohi. Right? So voluntarily, he begins to closely associate with Prakriti. And the result is Sadasat. That means the duality of good and bad, Guna Sangasva. Because now he is bound by the modes of material nature. Right. So this is an explanation of how the jiva who is transcendental to the modes becomes bound by the modes. So Krishna begins the chapter by glorifying. The first two verses, he glorifies the knowledge. He says that again I shall declare to you. So again means he has already spoken about it in the 13th chapter. He spoke about it in verse 22. And now he's saying, again, I am speaking that. And then he said, this is the best of all knowledge. Now, when he says this is best of all, it does not mean that, so Krishna has already spoken about bhakti. It does not mean that it is better than bhakti, but it is best of all because it helps you attain bhakti. So the context has already been established that bhakti is the best. Now, what can be better than bhakti? That which helps you attain bhakti. It's like somebody tells you there is a treasure and that's the best knowledge. But better than that is somebody gives you a map to that treasure. Now, Krishna also says, idam jnanam upashritaya. Right? So he right away gives the falshruti that you can perfect your life by idam jnanam upashritaya, by taking shelter of this knowledge. Now, normally, Krishna says you take shelter of me, mamekam sharnam. Now, here he is saying you take shelter of the knowledge. Why? Because at this stage, the person may not be attracted to Krishna. The person may not have enough faith in Krishna to take shelter. But the person is comfortable taking shelter of knowledge. Right? So this is a via media to a more advanced step. When one takes shelter of somebody else, then the faith is absolute. Right? It's like you go to a doctor and the doctor says, take this medicine, take this medicine. So you follow the instructions of the doctor. So you have some amount of faith in the doctor, but you follow the instructions of the doctor. But then if the doctor says that you just come and you live with me and you completely depend on me for anything and everything, then the person will say, I don't think so. Right? So that requires a lot more commitment. But taking shelter in a way is also taking shelter of knowledge, is taking shelter of Krishna, because it leads to it. Right? So in the 18th chapter, Krishna will say that when he's concluding his instructions, he'll say that Adeshati chayaidam dharmyam samvadam avayam. That one who studies this conversation worships me by his intelligence. So what does worshipping by intelligence means? You study the instructions, you take shelter of the instruction. Right? So studying the philosophy is important because it leads to taking shelter of Krishna. That's why Bhakti Sastri is important, because we are understanding the information, and that builds conviction. So now, after setting the stage, Krishna begins to give the knowledge that he has promised. So he begins by explaining that how does the jiva come into the material world? How does he come under the modes? So previously in the 7th chapter and verses 4 and 5, Krishna had mentioned that both the Prakriti and Jiva are, he said, they're my energy. One is the external energy, one is the marginal energy. Then in the 13th chapter, this is verse 27, he had mentioned that everything that you see around you in the material world is a combination of these two energies, essentially of Jiva and Prakriti. Now he's expanding on it, and he says that Mahad Yunir, that all these that are coming forth in the material world, the material nature is the mother. And Aham Bij Pradapita, I am the seed giving father. So when a child is born, the child has little characteristics of the mother, little characteristics of the father. Like when a child is born, they'll say, here's the father's eyes and the mother's nose. So mixed characteristics. Similarly, when the embodied soul appears, it has the mixed characteristics. That the nature of the soul is like Krishna, and the nature of the body is like the nature of the gross body is like the material nature. So after explaining how the jiva has become embodied, Krishna now gives an introduction to the modes. And this I'll go a little quickly because we are very familiar with this. It's been spoken many times. There are 3 modes of material nature: sattvam, rajas, and tamas, goodness, passion, and ignorance. And there are various metaphors that are used. Sometimes they're compared to colors, that there are 3 different colors and they intermingle to create so many different colors. Like you have yellow, blue, and red. Yellow is mode of goodness, red is mode of passion, blue is mode of ignorance. And then you mix these two over and over again, and you can practically get any color in the universe. Sometimes they're described as ropes. That these are 3 ropes that combine with one another and combine again, and they bind the consciousness of the person. So the consciousness of the person resides with the person, right? So many times we say that this is a very passionate environment, or this is an environment that is very, very tamasic. So what it means is that this is how the environment is affecting the consciousness of the person. For instance, there may be a cow that is grazing on the side. One person goes by and then he's touched by how gentle the cow is, how peaceful it is. Another person goes by and he says, oh, this is a cow. Maybe I can use it to plow my field or draw my cart. How can I exploit it? Yet another person may go by and say, oh, this is a cow, I can kill it and eat it. So same cow, 3 different people have 3 different reactions. Why are the reactions different? because the persons are in the different modes. So the modes are the subtle forces that shape the interaction between matter and consciousness. So people in the mode of in the mode of goodness are more introspective. People in the mode of passion, they're more energetic, and people who are in the mode of ignorance, they are lethargic. Okay. So a brief description of the three modes. So mode of goodness is Jnana Sangena and Sukha Sangena. So it is characterized by knowledge and happiness. Now, the Jnana is not necessarily transcendental knowledge. Right? Earlier on, we were using Jnana as synonymously with Atma Jnana, knowledge of the self. So this Jnana is really knowledge that is given in the Vedas. What are the do's and the don'ts? So these are pious activities. The Vedas say that in order to, for a grahastha, your duty is to support the other three varnas, your duty is to protect your family. So there's no self-realization per se, there is no Krishna consciousness, but the person is associating and acting according to the knowledge that is given in the scriptures. In the 16th chapter, we'll see where Krishna makes this as the distinguishing factor between divine and demoniac. He says those who follow the Vedas are divine, those who do not follow are demoniac. Right? So another symptom of Jnana is that it is illuminating and pious. So one who is in this mode experiences happiness. Prabhupada says that while this is the highest of the mode, it is an elevating mode, it is not necessarily so it is also a mode that conditions one to the material life. Prabhupada in the purport says that the difficulty here is that when a living entity is situated in the mode of goodness, he becomes conditioned to feel that he is advanced in knowledge and better than others. In this way, he becomes conditioned. The best examples are scientists and the philosopher. So the problem is that they do not feel the pinch. It's said that only when your shoe starts pinching will you look for another shoe. So people in the mode of goodness, they don't feel that pinch. They lead a serene life. They lead a life that is relatively happy. So they continue in that mode. And their destination is typically higher planets, either the same planet in a better birth or Svargaloka. Okay, let's look at the mode of passion. The main characteristics of the mode of passion is Rag and Trishna. So Rag is attachment and Trishna is craving. So craving means that the person wants to possess. And Rag is that after having possessed something, the person does not want to give it up. So there is a lot of obsession with material activities, material things like fame or wealth or material opulence. So what the modes are actually giving us is they're in a way tricking us, right? So let me give you an example. If you go to buy a car and the salesman will show you around, a new salesman who's not very experienced will try to close the deal by saying that, would you like to buy a car? After seeing all this, would you like to buy a car? Now, you might say yes or no. But what an experienced salesman will do is, he will say that, of these three cars, which one do you want to buy? So it is said that few things take away our freedom as completely as the illusion of freedom. Right? So in the second case, the salesman is giving you the illusion of freedom, that you are free to choose any one of these three cars. But essentially, he's taking away your freedom. That's the nature of Rajagun. We think we are free, but actually we are free to make a limited number of choices. We have a television in our house and we have 100 channels. We are free to choose any one of the 100 channels. But actually, the real choice is, do we even need to switch on the television? That choice gets taken up. So what Rajagun will do is, 100 channels are not enough. Let me give you 200 channels. That's not enough. Here's another package that gives you 1,000 channels. And you say, okay, more freedom, more freedom. But it's an illusion of freedom. So Prabhupada gives the example of mode of fashion as manifested by attraction between a man and a woman, and the pursuit of some honor in the society, right? Or in wanting the family, prestige and family. So all these are essentially trishna, the desire for something, and then raga, having obtained it, becoming attached to it. The destination of these is essentially earthly planets. Now, the third is the mode of ignorance. So, the mode of ignorance is described essentially as not knowing what to do and when to do. Okay. And so this is described in the 8th verse. So Krishna uses the word tu, in the Sanskrit word tu, to distinguish it from the other two modes. That all three modes are bad, but the mode of ignorance is especially bad. So while there is goodness, in the mode of goodness there is knowledge. In the mode of ignorance, Krishna says pramada, there is madness. While in the mode of passion there is activity, in the mode of ignorance there is inactivity. Now this inactivity is different from the inactivity in the mode of goodness. In the mode of goodness, the inactivity is based on jnana. It's based on knowledge. Here the inactivity is based on tamasa. It's basically based on lethargy. And the destination here is lower planets or lower species. So the next question that comes is that how do these modes coexist? Do they exist by themselves? The person is either in the mode of goodness or passion or ignorance, or is there some combination? And Krishna says that all three modes, they exist simultaneously. Right? And that's what makes understanding the modes very difficult. So you will not see somebody who is completely in the mode of ignorance. I said that we may understand moods, but we do not understand modes. The same person at different times may be in different modes. In different situation, may be in different modes. So one thing that we learn in the Bhagavad Gita is that we are not the master of our bodies. Right? The modes are so powerful that they're taking away control from us. So people make resolutions, like New Year is coming in a few months, and what follows after the resolutions is dissolutions. They're saying the average time that a resolution is, this is in the US, average time for which the resolution is followed in the US is a few days. Right? 1 day, 2 days. That's the average duration of a typical resolution. And the person says, I changed my mind. But actually what happens is the mind changed them. The modes changed them. So how does this help us? That understanding that we are not the master of our house, it gives us an insight on how to deal with ourselves. Right? We go to somebody's house and then mistakenly we start thinking that we are the master of the house. Right? We start using stuff, we start ordering the person around. It's going to create tension. But once we understand that we are not the master of the house, but we are sharing the house with another master, then we begin to become more tuned into how to deal things. There's a big difference in, especially for those of you who have lived in hostels in college, there's a big difference between living by yourself in a room and sharing it with somebody else. Right? And when you share with somebody else, so much of energy goes into making sure that the environment is congenial. Otherwise, there will be acrimony. Right? So when we move away from this conception that I am the only master in the house, there is somebody else also who is in the house, then it makes the whole everything different. So if we understand that I am not the only one who is in charge of my body, there is this mystical entity called the modes of material nature. And because we are conditioned, we have to learn to live with this entity. Right? Once the person understands the modes, the person will understand the moods, and then the person will be in a better position to deal with himself and others. For instance, and this is more from a spiritual perspective, people very quickly realize that morning time is better for chanting, right? Why? Because it's sattvic. So this is understanding the modes, that the mode of goodness is prominent in the morning. So let me do my spiritual activities. Let me do my reading, my chanting in the morning. One who does not understand the modes will say, well, I can chant anytime. I can chant in the night. I can chant while I am driving. But there are different modes that are prominent at the time. So this is a situation where not understanding the modes makes things difficult, right? So the reason that Krishna is spending time on this, not because he wants us to exploit the modes for success, but he wants us to be able to dovetail the modes to our spiritual journey. Remember, this is all in the context of proceeding towards Bhakti. Now, in verses 5 to 9, Krishna gives the analysis of the modes. The mode of goodness conditions one to happiness, passion to fruitive activities, and ignorance to madness. And they coexist with one another. So this essentially is the Krishna analyzes the modes from 4 perspectives. The characteristics of the mode is what their individual nature is. The symptoms is how does it manifest. The impact is the short-term outcome of it. And the destination is the long-term outcome of it. Right. So I won't go through all of them. I'll share this obviously with you. I've also given the verse numbers for reference. So characteristics of the mode of goodness, born of piety, passion, unlimited desires. Symptoms of the mode of goodness, when all the gates of the body are eliminated by knowledge. The impact is that it results in piety and real knowledge develops. And the destination is that the person attains to the pure higher plans. So in this way, from verse 6 to verse 18, Krishna is giving this analysis of the modes from these 4 perspectives. And the reason Krishna spends this time is that we are armed with this, we can recognize the modes in ourselves and we can recognize the modes in others. That's why he gives the symptoms. That if you see somebody who is behaving in a certain way, then you can understand that this person is in this prominent mode. So very rarely is one mode on its own, but you can understand this is the prominent mode. And also you can look at it in yourself to see how you are, what is the direction that you are taking. Is your mode of goodness increasing? Is sometimes people take to spirituality, but they become even more contentious. They become even more argumentative. So, but if the person takes a step back and say that which mode is becoming more prominent in me, and then take corrective action. So, in after having described the modes, Arjun may ask, he does not actually ask this question. Vishwanath Chakravarti says that these are implicit questions. So Arjun may ask that, Krishna, why are you giving me all this knowledge? How will I use this knowledge? So in verse 19, Krishna explains that you need to know that the jiva is transcendental to the modes. So what does that, and what's the information that gives you? That it is only the modes that are the doer. So what's the rule of the soul? The soul is the chooser. Once the soul chooses the modes or the combination of modes, it becomes the passive observer. Right? So you go to a parking lot, you pick a car, or let's assume there are drivers in the car. There are many cars. There are sports cars, there are small cars, big cars. So you go to the parking lot and you pick a car. Once you get into the car, then you're an observer. If it's a sports car, it goes fast. If it's a small car, then maybe it's a little uncomfortable. So that is the interaction between the souls and the modes. Now Krishna is going to explain the real result of understanding these modes. Right? In the verse 20, he says that when the embodied being is able to transcend these three modes associated with the material body, he can become free from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and can enjoy nectar even in this life. So Krishna is giving us the modes so that we can transcend the modes. It's like a person has been tied with a rope and there are knots on the rope, and then somebody comes and gives the sequence by which you can untie the knot. The nature of knots is, especially if they're difficult knots, you pull one rope, the knots become even stronger. You pull another one, it will look like it's becoming weaker, and then it becomes more tangled. So you need to exactly know which rope to pull at what time. Right? So Krishna is giving us that knowledge, that if you are able to recognize the modes on action, agent, and object, then it will help you transcend your karmic reactions. Right? So one who understands the motivation of these actions, that it's essentially the modes, will be able to develop detachment from those actions. Right? For example, that there is a prison, and a prison guard, he does his duty. He does his duty of keeping the prisoners inside, maybe being strict on them, maybe giving them punishment. But if he understands that this is just his duty, he has nothing against the prisoners, they are there because of whatever crimes they committed. So he does not get implicated in any feelings of hatred. So similarly, if a man is walking down the street and then somebody says something offensive, then the man looks at him and then he sees that the man is actually intoxicated. So the man says, oh, let it go. This person is intoxicated. He doesn't know what he is doing. That is the nature of understanding the modes. That we get caught up in karmic reactions is when we develop attachment to what is going around. So somebody comes and insults us, and then we take offense to that insult. And then because of that offense, we now have a karmic connection with the person. That person has hurt us, so that karma needs to be somehow rectified. But if we look at the person and say, well, it's just the modes that he's acting. The soul is pristine, it's just the modes he's acting. Like we said, it's just a drunkard person who is insulting me. It's the intoxication that is speaking. So I don't take any offense. So once we understand that all around us, it is nothing but the modes that are acting, we can develop detachment. This realization converts karma to akarma. So Krishna is thus showing Arjuna two things. One, he is showing that what is the nature of the bondage by explaining the modes of material nature, and then he's explaining the cause of liberation by transcending the modes. So the first step is Gyan, understanding the modes, and the second step is Bhakti, which is transcending the modes. Now, even though Bhakti is independent of Gyan, but Gyan can always act as a supporting anga. Right? So with this, Krishna ends his description of the three modes. So Arjun will now ask Krishna three questions, and the rest of the chapter is devoted to answering these questions. So far, Krishna has been describing the binding nature of the three modes. Now Arjun inquires about how to transcend the modes. He asks Krishna to describe those who have freed themselves from the modes in three ways. Right? So he says that Kai Linga, that what are the symptoms of the persons who have transcended the modes? And Krishna will answer this in verses 22 and 23. Secondly, he will ask, what is their behavior or conduct? And Krishna will answer it in 24 and 25. And the third, he will ask how to transcend the mode, and Krishna will answer it in 26. So the questions look similar, but there are slight difference. When Arjun is asking Krishna about the characteristics or the symptoms of the mode, he's asking it for himself. That how do I perceive the modes in myself? When he's asking that what is the behavior or conduct of the modes, then he's saying, how do I detect it in other persons? And when he's asking for the process to transcend, that's a straightforward question. How do I transcend? Now, these questions are similar to the questions that Arjun has asked in the second chapter, right? If you remember verse 54, Arjun says, Sthita Pratyaya Bhasha, right? He asks the questions about how does the person sit and stand and how does he conduct himself? And that's because the second chapter is a summary of the rest of the Bhagavad Gita. So those questions that were asked there that Krishna answered briefly are are essentially a summation of the questions that are asked over here. So let's look at the answers that Krishna gives. So for the first question, that what are the symptoms of the mode? Krishna says that such a person is neutral to the modes. So what does it mean? It means that he does not, the person is neither attached to a mode, nor is he averse to a mode. So he does not become happy when the mode of goodness appears, and he does not become unhappy when the mode of ignorance comes. So such a person is beyond hatred and attachment. Right? So this is self-evaluation. So essentially, Krishna says is that such a person is neutral. So neutral means that the person does not resent or rejoice the modes, but simply is an observer of the modes as if neutral. Right? So there's two similar sounding words. There is uninterested and disinterested. Right? So disinterested means detached, impartial, and uninterested means having no interest. So let's assume there is a cricket match that is going on. So there may be some person who is uninterested in cricket. So he doesn't even go to watch it. He doesn't even care there's a cricket match that is going on. That is uninterested. Now, within the cricket match, there is an umpire. And the umpire, he is watching everything with great interest. But he is not favoring anything. The players keep asking him, out, not out, 4 or 6. He evaluates things on the merit, and then he gives the verdict. That means he is disinterested. So what Krishna is recommending is that one should become disinterested. So sometimes it is said that since the mind is connected to the modes, neglect the mind, right? Which means become uninterested in the mind. But what if the mind is saying that there is a thorn in your feet, and then you say, oh, I don't care about my mind, right? The thorn basically will become septic, right? So you need to pay attention. But the recommendation is that you become neutral to the mind. You become disinterested. So when the mind comes and gives you options, you evaluate them impartially, find out what is the best thing to do, and then do it, right? So how to tolerate the urges? The secret is that one evaluates them impartially. So as practicing devotees, we all have this experience of urges. Now, what having a spiritual perspective helps us understand is that these urges, they are not persistent. They're like waves. They rise and then they subside. So when one has to conquer an urge, the word that is used is tolerate. So tolerate means that you only resist them while they are rising, and when they fall, then you don't care about them, right? So that is why Krishna says that you observe the modes. You observe that they are growing, and then you tolerate them. You observe that when they are falling, then they are not a threat to you. Right? Sometimes we are wanting to do some spiritual activities, and then suddenly we get this urge to do something else. That let me see what's going on in the internet. Let me see who has WhatsApped me. And for a while, it's strong. But empirically, we know that all we have to do it is tolerate it for a while, and then it goes away. It's no longer a hindrance. That is the valuable information that Krishna is giving us about ourselves by explaining how the modes work. Now, the second question was, what is his conduct or observable traits, which is answered in 24-25. And the main trait is equanimity, right? So Krishna says that such a person does not react to the experience. Now, he does not say that such a person does not experience duality. He says the person does not react to the experience. So it's not that the person is not aware of happiness and distress. He is just not reacting to it. Why? Because he's in the first situation. He's watching it crest and he's tolerating it, understanding that it will then go away. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, we see that when Mahaprabhu was doing kirtan in the house of Srinivasacharya, then his son died at the time, and Srinivasacharya, he decided not to tell Mahaprabhu because he didn't want to disturb the kirtan. But nevertheless, he was sad, right? So that sadness was there, but he knew that sadness will go away. Now, Mahaprabhu, being transcendental, he understood what was going on. But, this is an example of a person, the person's son has died. It will obviously put the person very strongly in the mode of passion or ignorance. And Srinivasacharya was very sad, not that he was indifferent to his son, but then he understood that this feeling will go away. And let me not disturb the kirtan of Mahaprabhu. In this, of course, there is a devotional aspect also, but for the sake of the modes, we are analyzing it in this way. So, such a person is equally disposed because he realizes that he has nothing to do with the material nature, right? So Krishna says he's equal to praise and criticism. Krishna gives 3 levels of equanimity. So he says that he considers objects that yield happiness and distress are the same, which means that he is equal to material objects. That's the lowest level of equanimity. The higher level to it is that he is equal to praise and criticism. So this is more at a subtle platform where somebody is criticizing you or praising you. And the third level is that he's equiposed to respect and disrespect, right? So criticism is done through words, but respect and disrespect is accomplished through actions. That it's a stronger representation of. Somebody may criticize you that this is not the right thing to do, but then the person might go around and say, this person I will not invite to my house, this person I will avoid. So then it gets manifested in the person's action as respect and disrespect. So being equal to that, a person who is respectful or disrespectful, that is the highest, because it is indicating that the person has conquered the false ego. Right? So okay, so this is the final slide that answers the third question: how to transcend the modes. And this is explained in verse 26. Mam chayu vibacharena bhakti yogena sevata sagunan samatyatan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. It's one of Prabhupada's favorite verse. He quotes it very, very often. And while the first two questions, they basically are teaching us how to live with the modes, the third question is revealing how to get rid of the modes. And the answer is simple. Krishna says that one who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes. So when Krishna says Mam Cha Yovipacharena, so Vishwanath Chakravarti says, Cha generally means and. But in this verse, Cha should be read as Eva. So Mam Cha should be read as Mam Eva, that one who renders devotional service only to me. Mam Eva Yovipacharena, how Bhakti Yogena Sevaka. So that is the easy way to escape the modes. And Krishna concludes the chapter by basically stating that that one who transcends the modes, the destination of that person is the Brahman. And then he says, I am the basis of that Brahman. Right? So obviously, when a person is practicing bhakti, the destination is not going to be the impersonal Brahman. That's why Krishna quickly says, I am the basis of the Brahman. So the destination essentially is Krishna. So this chapter gives us the philosophical understanding of devotional service, or the path to devotional service. How, by applying our intelligence in understanding the modes, we can understand the influence of the modes, and then we can also understand how to live with the modes, so how to make the best of a bad deal. And most importantly, we also are given the process to escape from the modes. So, well, this is for next week, but let me go back to the previous. So I'll pause over here and see if there's any discussion. Chaitanya Prabhu, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. In the beginning of the class, we spoke about jnana and devotion, or similar lines. So I was wondering, is it like jnana is important as well apart from bhakti, or is it like I've seen some people that who are not knowledgeable, who don't have anything to know about Krishna, but they have like immense love for Krishna. I've seen those people as well. Does it mean that jnana does not play any important role in that situation, or are they already jnanis but they are not sort of showing the symptoms? I'm kind of a little bit confused there.
I think both the answers that you are giving are correct, Prabhu, that bhakti is not dependent on jnana, but jnana is a supporting anga. It helps you attain bhakti. Right? So you can attain bhakti without jnana, but jnana helps in attaining bhakti. And there are people who are completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness. They have already gone through that process. Right? So amongst the gopis of Krishna who are dancing, they are the Vedas personified. So they are the embodiments of knowledge. Now they have come to the stage of spontaneous love for Krishna. So it doesn't mean that they're ignorant. The gopis were full of knowledge, even though they're often presented as simple cowherd damsels. But they're in the conversations you will see with when Uddhav comes, the highly philosophical conversations that they're having, but they don't care about that because their love has already eclipsed the lower sentiments that are powered by knowledge.
So as a practicing sadhakas, I understand we are doing Bhakti Shastri, we are doing all this, but as a practicing sadhakas, if is it like an absolute necessary that we become we get the knowledge only then we do the bhakti, or where only then we are eligible to reach Krishna?
So as practicing devotees, the general understanding is that by pursuing the path of knowledge, we understand what needs to be done. By pursuing the path of bhakti, we do it. So both are important. Prabhupada makes this famous statement that if one has only knowledge but does not practice, then the person is a mental speculator. And if a person practices without knowledge, then he will go into the realm of being ritualistic and superstitious. So both need to be together. That is why Prabhupada wrote all these books, so that we know what needs to be done. But just knowing is not enough. So that's why Prabhupada created temples. He gave us the association by which now we can do what we have understood that needs to be done.
Makes sense. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Rajkumar, Prabhu?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Very great lecture today. So I have 3 questions. I don't know if you can answer all. So first one is, you said that, we do things because of the effect of the modes. Sorry, I forgot my question. So, okay. So sometimes I do things, I know that they are wrong, but I still do them. There are many times in my life, I think I need to change, but I don't change and I feel guilty. So is it because of the modes and I have no control on it? And my second question is...
So maybe I'll take them. So you have a good question. Maybe I'll take them one by one.
Okay.
So you said that sometimes one does things that they know should not be done. Is it because of the modes? The answer is yes. The second part of your question was that I have no control of them. The answer is no. Because if you did not have any control on the modes, Krishna would not speak the Bhagavad Gita. Then essentially we would become a puppet to the modes. But the matter of fact is that we have control of we have the choice to make. So we can choose not to follow the modes. So just like we are choosing to follow the path of bhakti. And Mamcha Vibhacharana Bhakti Yogena Sevata. So by following the path of bhakti, we are loosening the hold of the modes. Does it happen overnight? No. Like Prabhupada gave the example that you have a fan running, you switch off. Fan is not going to stop right away, but it will slow down, and then stop. So even in the life of devotees, the influence of the modes will be there. But they should, as you practice bhakti, the influence of the modes will weaken. Now, what does it mean the influence will weaken? Because the modes are also important, right? So if you go on book distribution, it's very strongly in the mode of passion. You have to pursue people, talk to them, convince them, right? You cannot just say, I have philosophical understanding and sit. Somebody has to clean the temple. Somebody has to go out and raise Lakshmi. That's all mode of passion. That's being used in bhakti. Now, what about mode of ignorance? You have to sleep. Sleeping is mode of ignorance. But devotees say that we are taking rest, which means they're giving rest to their body so that the body is then ready to resume its devotional service. So, mode of ignorance is important. Otherwise, you'll die. If you don't sleep, you'll eventually die. So, what understanding we get is that we are the choosers. Once we choose, then we are bound to them. So the choice that we make is how do we control the modes rather than letting the modes control us. That is the power that Bhakti will give us. Simply by practicing sadhana bhakti, we will see the dial change more and more, where instead of the modes controlling us, we begin to control the modes.
But so that's another question. When we are in control of a mode, we are not aware of it. So how do we take corrective actions? It's happening naturally. And so how do we correct? And then the follow-up question on the first answer you gave is like last year in Kartik Mas, I did a lot of austerities, and I'm not doing this month, this year, and I know that, but still I'm not doing it. I don't know. I don't know what happened. So if I'm in a mode of ignorance or whatever, how do you know that you are in certain mode and you should take a corrective action? It happens naturally, right?
So if a person is possessed by a ghost, then the person cannot drive the ghost away. He needs to go to
Okay.
expert ghost driver away, who will drive away the ghost, right? So if you are realizing that you are being controlled by the modes, you need to take shelter of someone who can work with you to drive the modes away. So the process of bhakti begins with taking shelter of a spiritual master. So the point you're making is absolutely right. On our own, very difficult. How can you ask a diseased person to cure himself if he's afflicted with the disease? So why are we reading this Bhagavad Gita? Because somebody told us. We trusted somebody, and the person told us, read Bhagavad Gita. There are so many ways that you can spend a Thursday evening, but you choose to spend it this way because you trusted somebody, right? Now, your intrinsic nature may be that it's been a long day of work, let me just relax. Let me take it easy. But then you have trusted somebody who said, Prabhu, listen to the Bhagavad Gita, it will help you. Right? So,
but Prabhuji, like today it happened to me that I said, I have decided that I have to attend the class no matter what. I had to go to somebody's funeral. I came back. Sometimes I said, okay, I'll miss it. So I don't know, that day I missed it and today I made it. So I'm the same person, right? But there was a day where I said, okay, forget about the class. I'm tired or something. And today I was very much decided, even though I couldn't complete my puja, I started at 8 a.m. So who did that? And I did not do anything on it. It happened automatically.
Difficult for me to, I think you're asking very personal questions. Difficult for me to comment on that in a group setting.
Sure.
Important to understand the philosophical aspect of it. And the questions you ask are very good questions, they're very valid questions. We can have a separate conversation.
Okay. So last question is, you were talking about if somebody behaves badly with us and if we do something, it's karmic reaction. So there is one thing you can do is if somebody misbehaves, you don't take any reaction. You don't do anything like don't take revenge or don't retaliate or don't say anything back to them. But at the same time, within your heart, you might feel hurt. So even if you feel hurt, will it give a karmic reaction?
So the way karma is described, Prabhu, is that what the other person does is that person's karma. What you do is your karma. So that person is behaving badly to you. Now, being hurt and all that, that's more emotional. Good and bad is based on the scriptures. It's not just based on one's feeling, right? Because then it becomes predicated on so many things. But scripturally, is that person doing something right or wrong? If he's doing right, regardless of whether you're hurt or not, it's not impious activities, right? So that is that person's karma. How you react to it, that's your karma. So you may tolerate it, then you're not accruing any karma. You may retaliate, then you're accruing karma. Or you may try and help the person, you're accruing good karma. That is onto you. So you're only responsible for yourself. That's an important point to understand.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Rajiv Sham, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much for this class. And few of the examples were really nice. So my question is related to work setting. So we are typically in our work setting where we have ambitions to do, right, to make progress in the work life. So as a sadhaka, practicing sadhaka, is that appropriate, or is that, because that kind of in a way brings in the passionate portion a little bit more. So how do we balance that, I guess?
We'll read a little bit about this, Prabhu, in the Nectar of Instruction, where Rupa Goswami says, he gives this term, Atyahara Prayascha Prajalpanyamagra. So there is endeavor and there is over endeavor. And that it's a line that is, it's not an absolute line. It depends on one's situation. But like the example of Maharaj Chitraketu, right? So he was not destined to have a child, but he refused to accept that. He married 10 million wives, and each one of them was barren. Even then, he was not satisfied, and then he basically begged, and then he got a son who basically was again the cause of distress. So one should act in a way, Prabhupada gives practical advice, one should act in a way that takes care of your necessities in life, that gives you enough time to practice your spiritual life, to help out in other devotees and temple, but one should not over endeavor. But it's not that devotees are setting themselves up for failure or menial lives, right? Because Prabhupada, his aspiration was that when will this is Bhakti Siddhanta, Prabhupada used to, Bhakti we know that, even Prabhupada would repeat that, when will the day come when the judges will be sitting with a Vaishnav Tilak, when the leaders of the country will be devotees of Krishna, right? So this is all people who are aspiring for greatness, but they're doing it in the proper spirit, right? So it's not that devotion makes people unsuccessful or failures. It just makes them detached from success or failure. If it happens, good. If it does not happen, so be it.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Shubhamay Mataji.
Dandavad Pranams, Prabhuji. What is I have two questions. What is transcending the modes mean? And then the question is, when you were discussing verse 19 and you said Jiva is transcendental to the mode, modes are the doer, soul is the chooser. What does that mean?
Okay, thank you. So I think there are similar questions. So transcending basically means not being affected by them, going beyond. Literal meaning transcend means to go beyond, right? So in the conditioned stage, the jiva is bound by the modes. That what they do is dictated by the modes. When the person executes devotional service, then the person is not affected by the modes, but uses the modes. Like, I'll give you an example that Srila Prabhupada was once in Mayapur, and he was sitting with a group of his disciples, and he was in a very good mood. He was talking and laughing and joking. And then one disciple came in who had done some big mistake, and Prabhupada was turned to him and was very angry. And he chastised him strongly, told him what he needs to do. The disciple gave obeisances and went away. And then when he went away, then Prabhupada was again laughing and joking. So Prabhupada was using anger as an instrument to correct the disciple, right? So he did not become angry. Like when we become angry, then anger takes over us, right? So that is us being controlled by the modes. Transcending the modes means that we don't get controlled by the modes, but we control the modes. And the fact that the jiva is intrinsically transcendental to the modes refers to the fact that in the original spiritual position, there are no modes. The modes are only a product of the material world. Right? So the jiva has nothing to do with the modes. Like it's like you go to the parking lot, you're walking. There may be 100 cars. It does not affect you. You're walking. But at some point, you choose and say, I'll sit in this car. Now you're bound by that car. Whether that car is going fast or slow, or whether that car is giving a comfortable ride or not. Now you don't have a choice. You made your choice when you got into that car. But intrinsically, you're not the car. You are a person who was walking. That's the nature of the soul. Nothing to do with the modes. That's why it is said the jiva is the chooser. Because the modes are not sentient. Right? If two people are fighting, then the only way the fight can be amongst equals if they are both sentient. Right? You can't fight with a piece of rock. So the jiva, the modes can never fight with the soul. But the soul chooses the modes. And then the modes overpower the jiva. And that's why the point is made. In the original position, the jiva has nothing to do with the modes.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Okay, so let me set the group description, the division for the next class. So the next class is chapter 15, Purushottam Yoga. And this is a very small chapter, only 20 verses. And a fairly straightforward class. Like I said, all these chapters are very straightforward. So if each of the groups can prepare according to this verse, and then we'll start off our next class with the presentation from the groups, and then I'll give a summation after that, and we can do any question answers. Okay, I'll send it to you also, and I think Chaitanya Prabhu will also share.
I've put the thing in the screen. I put the screenshot in the group, Prabhu.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu. Okay, so we'll end here. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Bye.